Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate it. I'd also love it if you'd leave a comment before you leave. That really also helps. So I have a tendency to make kind of big, bold stuff, so I thought I'd make something kind of delicate today. I'm going to do a 4-prong type of setting that I've not done before, and it should be kind of a fun adventure, and I hope you like it. I picked out a 5mm Peridot to make a setting for, and then we're going to kind of mirror the shape of the setting in the band of the ring too. So we'll give it a shot and see how it turns out. Before we do though, I want to make sure to thank some people who've been important to the success of my channel. My core group of supporters, my patrons, are such a nice group of people. They're not only generous, they're full of all sorts of knowledge that they're willing to share with me and others, and they've created a lovely community over on my Patreon, so thank you for that, as well as the financial support. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 10,600, I believe. That is fantastic. I can't believe how many people have subscribed. When I started this, I never would have guessed that this could happen, so thank you so much for that. Not only the nice things that you say in the comments, but also the financial contributions like the Buy Me a Coffee and the Super Thanks. Those kinds of things help me to buy supplies and keep us afloat. So thanks for that. I appreciate that. All right, let's start this video and see how this project comes out. These are a couple of my design idea books. There's 4 or 5 different cover designs on the merch store. I have found in recent years, if I sketch up what I'm planning to do, I end up with a much better result. And these, having a little grid pattern in the background, are super handy for helping me to keep my drawings sort of symmetrical, which I don't do very well freehand. Drawing isn't my strongest suit. But alright, so here's a little Peridot. Get my little stone grabber thingy. Hopefully you can see that. It's a pretty little 5mm faceted Peridot. And what we're going to do, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, but this is a kind of a prototype piece that I was working on. This is 18 gauge round wire that's been flattened just a bit, and then I made it into kind of a slight curve and soldered 2 of them together and repeated that process. And then I soldered the 2 together at the base, and if I was going to finish this one, I would probably solder another one on either side. Now I think in order to make it a little bit easier to do, I'm probably going to do 2 in a single piece of wire that meet at the middle and flare out and come back together. File that so that I can bend it, and it'll be 1 piece rather than, well, actually it'd be 2 pieces, but that'll stay together much better than 4 separate pieces like this, especially when I go to add the other opposite prongs. So it's going to be kind of a dainty little thing like that. It may make it a little bit shorter than this, because that seems a little bit tall for my taste. I'm going to mirror that gap there in the band as well. If you look at it from the side here, I'm going to use some 14 gauge square wire, and I've already flattened it. My rolling mill is out of commission right at the moment. So I used a hammer to flatten it out, which is just fine. That works as well. We'll build the band out of that flattened 14 gauge square wire, and then we'll connect the 2 of them together, pickle it, and set the stone. So there's really only 2 materials. Here's the 18 gauge round wire that's flattened, and the 14 gauge square wire that's flattened. Here's a little piece of the 18 gauge that's slightly flattened. I actually did roll this one through the rolling mill the other day, but that was before I changed the wheels and found out that my flat wheels were broken. I'll keep you updated on the rolling mill situation shortly. Okay, so I think I cut these ones to be about 8 millimeters long. So I'm going to go like 7. And then I think since I'm going to do 2 of these together instead of each individual one to start with, we'll measure it out to about 14, maybe 14.5 millimeters, and cut 2 of those. So let's file the hand flat here. So there's 7 right there. I'm going to go 7.5. And another 7.5 should be 15, right? About like that. This is going to be pretty small work, and my camera is only so good, so I'll do my best to make it so you can see it. I have a bit of a tendency to kind of get in my head and forget that I'm filming and sometimes move out of frame, so try not to do that. I just bought some new fine tip markers and I forgot to bring them in. This one's about dried out a little bit. I think because I want these to, I want them to kind of do this from the side if you look at it. Okay, so they'll need to be soldered in the middle and at either end like that with kind of a little curve to each one. And I think in order to get this to come nicely to the middle here, I need to file this middle part a little bit narrower so I can solder those two middles together and get a nice kind of seam. So let's see if I can figure out a way to do that. It's a little thing. Sometimes it's nice to have something that you can hold on to it with. So maybe I can use my miter vise jig to kind of isolate a little part there. I said I've never made one quite like this before, so we'll see how kind of figuring this one out as we go. This has got a side file, so I'm going to kind of do it just kind of right along the miter vise jig, right on the edge there. Got to be careful not to file it too thin. A little bit of a flat spot there. At the center point where I filed it a little bit thinner, I bent it with my pliers. I just kind of did a slight bend, and I'm going to try and get these to be similar in angle. So let's bend this one just a little bit more. I put the file part to the outside, although I think it probably doesn't matter. And what we'll do is we'll start by soldering that together like this. So I generally use hard silver sheet solder for everything, and most of this I may use easy solder on when I'm soldering the head to the band on this one. We'll see how confident I'm feeling at the end. I use a liquid flux called My-T-Flux. The torch is a Silversmith model, which is their acetylene air torch, and I use a #1 tip on it generally. So I actually have some little tiny bits of solder here. You want to see the size we're talking about. These are, I cut them to be about that size, which I'd guess would be a millimeter by a millimeter maybe. Pretty small. Let's find a flattish spot here. The thing that could happen if you're not careful, if you overheat, solder has a tendency to wick along the seams of things. And it's got enough force when it starts to run, something as light as these little wires, the wick effect from here out here could pull those two together. So I'm going to kind of keep an eye on that and get it just kind of tacked together, and then we'll bend these other ones towards each other and make nice kind of narrow football shapes or marquee shapes on each side. So we'll start with that. Okay, another thing that I do that not everybody does is I use a pick to solder most of the time, and it's a super useful skill that allows you to place solder very precisely. And so if you're interested in that, I have a video about that. I'll put a link up there for you. It's a good skill to have. It makes things a lot easier in my opinion. Okay, so let's just pick this up here. Get this hot enough. That looks pretty good. Okay, these ends are going to be coming back together, so I want a little bit of a flat spot, kind of at a slight angle. Right on the inside here, like this. Do that on both sides. Should be able to solder these ends. If you're a beginner at this kind of stuff, this is probably a project you would want to wait for a while till you have some experience, because you kind of get a feel for soldering over time, and at first everything feels a little bit awkward, and so doing really precision stuff like this is pretty hard to do until you've got a little bit of experience under your belt. So that looks pretty good so far. Now I need to bring these upwards towards each other like this, and I want to get them to be kind of how I did on this one. Like I said, on the first one here I did two separate pieces and soldered them together, so I used the miter vise jig to cut a 45 degree there. On this one I'm going to have to estimate a little bit, but we want to make sure it's right in the center, so let's really try to get that started in the center. I may use my saw to just get a little bit of a notch going, and then I'll use the file to file sort of a 45 degree there. So I'll be right back. I'll be just a second. Okay, I just did enough to get the file started in there, and I think I'm going to use the edge of this, the corner of this little flat file that has a nice edge on it. Normally I use the bastard file for something like this, but this is pretty small. I want to be careful not to file right through. If you can see that or not, it's pretty small. But I've got a notch that's kind of a V shape, and so now I should be able to bend it like this. I tried to pick up the stone earlier with my regular tweezers and I shot it across the table. So you can see that's we're starting to get in the right range. I'm also going to curve these in a little bit once this is soldered closed. So let's see if we can't put a little bit of solder on there to make sure it stays that way. One thing I can do maybe to prevent it from having any issues is just kind of push it into my magnesia block there a little bit, and then I'll just pick a little solder right in the middle there. I get asked about these a lot. These are magnesia blocks. They are a softer surface that's kind of handy when you need to push something into it, which sometimes if you don't want things to move around, it's useful. Just picking up a little tiny piece of solder. I'm going to do one more just to make sure I get it. I'm not sure that one went to both sides. There we go. Okay. So we got that now, that's soldered. And I'm not going to do it right now, but I'm going to bend these in a slight curve like that. But before I do that, I need to make two individual ones like this so I can solder them to either side of this. I think that'll be the easiest way. You probably could do this a second time and cut a notch out of one and then a notch out of the other and slide them together, but that's getting to be pretty small there, and I may not be able to do that precisely. I'm not sure. So I'm going to try and make two little ones, but we need to make sure that they're about the same length though. One of the reasons I flattened it is to give it a narrower, wider aspect. So, because I'm going to be bending it against that direction that it likes to bend, to give it a little bit more strength. This is pretty small, and silver's not as stiff as a lot of other metals like gold. And so I want to make sure the stone doesn't pop out easily. Nobody wants their stone to go flying. It's embarrassing. So just like I did on the inside part here and on the outside edge, I'm going to file this slightly at an angle, just like this. So it's a little bit tapered at the end, each of those. Okay, now I can give a slight curve to each of these. This is how I did the prototype. I just thought it would hold together better if we made the first piece out of not 4 separate pieces. Seemed logical, we'll see. Kind of like that. So we'll solder these together and these together. Let's do that next. So in the right spot. I've been told by numerous people I should get an eyedropper, and I still haven't. I think it's fine once we file these to an angle. It should be just about right. So let me flatten the ends. And we should be able to slide this in here. It's got a little slot for square wire. Push this in there, it fits pretty well. And that'll allow me to have this end stick out so I can file a nice 45 on it. These devices are super handy. I only learned about them a couple of years ago. I had never heard of these because apparently I don't get out much. That's worth a try. Let's see if we can get that to work this time. This one's soldered together a little bit. I'm going to see if I can stick a saw blade in there and saw that back apart, because I don't want to start over if I can avoid it. Okay, I'm going to see if I can repair that one at all. Now we need to make the band, and I've got a couple of pieces of 14 gauge square wire that I flattened out a bit, and we're going to do kind of the same thing we did here, where we're going to solder it in the center. So I already found the middle of these, and we'll just file a little flat spot there, I think the same way we did before. So let's use that header vise. So I think I'm going to do the same thing I did with the other one. Bend it right there with that side I just filed flat kind of to the outside like this. Let's do that. I should be able to. So we need to solder it like that, just like before, and then we'll make a narrow curve and get these ends together again. So let's do that next. I measured this to be about a size 7. We'll see how close it ends up being. Looks like everything's lined up pretty good. Let's give that a try. See how it works. I've got plenty of solder on the bottom. This is the way we're going to bend it, like this, into the band. So we do it in stages and anneal it because we're kind of going against the way it wants to go. We'll see if we need to do that or not. Maybe not. Where did you go, little setting? I located the little setting. So I don't even have to do really any filing. This is pretty much the right configuration. I just have to put it in the right way. I might have to flatten that out just a little bit because it's not perfectly aligned, but it's pretty close. But I need to pull these just a little bit closer and then check the angle. It needs to be just a little bit steeper angle like this. So we'll just That's actually pretty good like that. So I think, once again, let's try and use one of these magnesia blocks. For this one, I'm going to push these all the way in, just as far as I can. In a good spot area. So I'm going to find some T-pins to hold this thing up. So I got 4 T-pins. These are what my mom used to use for macrame. You can just get them at a sewing store or a hobby store. And I'm just going to solder right there. The trick with, well, the advantage to these magnesia blocks is you can push part of the piece in. The disadvantage is that you put that you push part of the piece in too, because that makes it hard to get it up to temperature. However, with some concerted effort, we can probably get that to flow. So the piece on top has plenty of exposure to the heat, so that's not going to be too problematic. We just need to make sure we don't overheat it before the other one flows. We want this to stick. I was debating whether to use easy solder, but I don't think I need to. We may have to do a little sawing because I think it rode up the crack on the side a little bit, but let's see. So I'm going to keep playing with the configuration, make sure I can get things straightened up. Like I said, our solder flowed a little bit further up here than I want, so I'll probably pop that saw in there again and see if I can't get that closer to where this one is. And then I'll do some final shaping of the band and pickle it, and then we'll come back and we're going to cut some little notches on the insides of these in order to create a nice spot for the girdle of the stone to pop into, and then we'll set it. So I'll get this cleaned up and then we'll set that stone. Okay, so I've got my ring. I cut some notches right at the top here, just a little bit inwards, and bent these in a little bit and thinned them out from the outside. And so my stone is sitting pretty straight. I'm just going to kind of use the flat side of this to push those down a little bit. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I need to do a little bit of cleanup up here. My prongs here aren't as symmetrical as I would like. There's a few little things I could have done a little neater, but for a first try that's not too bad. I did have my saw go astray right here a little bit, which is unfortunate. So I may not be able to sell this one, but it's a good practice piece for a first one of these. I think it's reasonably attractive. You just need to make sure these prongs are all sitting in the right spot. Okay, so I'll clean that up the rest of the way and take some better pictures. Alright, well that was the dainty split 4-prong setting. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm not sure if that's what we're going to call it in the video, but that's what I'm calling it right now. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And feel free to leave a comment. I love suggestions for videos. I want to do an upcoming question and answer video if you have any questions about why I do things the way I do, or about me as a silversmith, whatever. So feel free to leave a comment or a question, and after you do that, check out a couple other videos. I have over 300 now, and there's something for almost everybody, I think. So once you do that, make sure to hit the subscribe button before you leave. And the last thing is, check the video description down below for some very important links. There's one near the top of the description that's about safety. You should make sure to check out the safety video at some point. There's also some relevant links to supporting the channel. There's my merch store, which you can get one of those nice design idea books or a funny mug or whatever. There's the Buy Me a Coffee link, which provides me with cash to buy supplies, and that's a great way to support the channel. You can visit my jewelry website if you just want to buy some jewelry because you like what I make. That's also available. And finally, there's information about my Patreon, which you should check out if you're interested in becoming a part of that community over there, which I would recommend. It's a nice group. So thanks for watching. Happy silversmithing. Take care.